Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Can I Please Be a Cat? Take You to Court? Why I Didn't Know You Felt That Way. Let's jump right in. This chain of events started almost 20 years ago and involves myself and a notoriously snooty national real estate agency. There is a bit of background leading to the malicious compliance incident, so please bear with me. This all occurred in Queensland, Australia. I once rented a property through an agency from 2004 to 2006. Due to my ex-partner's explosive and violent temper, we had been handed an eviction notice. There was damage to the property that was unfixed at the time we were evicted. Damage that was in the form of fist and hammer-sized holes in the walls, etc. We obviously did not receive any of the bond deposit back, as the repair costs more than absorbed the amount. There was also an added sum of about $1,700 extra to cover the rest of the costs incurred repairing the damage. This amount was forwarded to a debt collections agency. This collection amount was in both of our names as we had jointly been on the lease agreement. I was not upset at the agency. They were just doing their job by being a good advocate for the owner of the property at this stage. Taking the bond and charging us for the repair was standard and not nasty, vindictive, or overkill in the slightest. My anger came later. Although I must admit, I was a bit miffed to be duly held financially responsible for the damage caused by my ex, but due to the nature of the joint lease, not much could be legally done. I was just grateful we had parted ways not long after. A few years post-eviction, I wanted to get my life more organized in many areas and tie up any loose ends that would impede me moving forward. A clean slate, so to speak. So the debt issue came first. After many phone calls and some paperwork exchange, plus an escalation or two, the debt collection agency finally agreed to split the $1,700 damages bill between the ex and myself. Now I could pay off my half and not be held accountable for his portion any longer. This had to be done without his consent as he refused. I'm unsure as to why, possibly hoping I would pay the whole lot to rebuild my credit rating, or most likely just to be annoying. Once I had paid off my portion of the collector's debt, I thought I was done with the whole business and the black mark against my name. Not so, unfortunately. It turned out that the state I lived in had a blacklist that real estate agencies and lessors could add tenants' names to. It's called the TICA list. All they needed was proof that the tenant had behaved in a bad enough manner regarding renting of a property to warrant being listed. Due to the fact we had been evicted, the damage, and also owed arrears to a debt agency for repairs, we unfortunately qualified. Being on this list made it almost impossible to rent, especially via a real estate agency. After speaking extensively with RTA, which is a government agency, I found I was definitely eligible to have my name removed from the list, so I started taking action for this to happen. I was able to demonstrate good faith by having paid for half of the damages. It also went in my favor that my partner was abusive and there was legal evidence of this fact. However, I was told the only way to have my name removed was by the real estate agency, so I approached them and asked for them to do so. They were very helpful initially. If I was able to show them proof that the debt was settled, they were happy to remove my name. At least 7 years had elapsed by this point, so it was considered punishment enough. At the time, after 5 years, your name is usually removed from the TICA list. However, this company apparently kept tabs on who they had added to the list, and when the person's 5 years expired, they just added them again. Dirty tactics indeed. Obviously, I had been re-added. So I provided relevant documents to the agency and was assured my name would be removed as soon as they located my file. This apparently had been stored away in archives as much time had passed since I rented with them. I was told this would take a week maximum, all good. So I called a week later and was told to wait another week, still in a kind, helpful, and cordial tone. I called again after that time and was told to wait, you guessed it, another week. And this time, I detected a tone of frost in the reply. So I called back more than a week later just to show patience, and now was spoken to in a very haughty manner. I was informed that my request was bothersome, being so because what I asked was not important, and finding my file was a waste of their staff time. They would call me when they got around to it. I expressed how important it was personally, and then heard the magic words almost verbatim, "If you want us to do this so badly, we will only be forced to help you if ordered. Perhaps you should take us to court if you can't be patient. Goodbye." String me along? Okay, game on. I had a feeling this was all done to avoid removing my name, as they had found my file. Also, that they were stalling and wanted me to stay blacklisted. But I wasn't backing down without a fight, and so I took their advice. I filed against them to have the matter seen in a small claims court. It cost me $35, which would be reimbursed by the agency if I won. I didn't have anything to lose, and I wanted them to know that not all people will hold indefinitely or continue to be unjustly punished for longer than fair. It was listed to appear in about 4 days from filing. As soon as they received the court date paperwork, I was suddenly bombarded with phone calls. How dare I take the agency to court when they were working their hardest to find my file and help me? Doing my best to sound apologetic for taking their advice, I thanked them for the suggestion, as it seemed there would now be a time frame at least for the matter to be dealt with. On the day of court, I had 3 sheets of paper as my sole evidence. A statement showing that repair bill had been paid and there was no finances outstanding. A statement from the RTA that I was eligible to have my name taken off the TICA list. And lastly, a document stating it was at the behest of the real estate agency to remove my name and that they had no good reason not to. Not 1, but 2 agents for the company showed up in court. When it came before the judge, both parties had to give evidence if relevant. I handed in my 3 pages. Seeing them pass the judge a thick folder of paperwork, including photos of the property damage, was rather amusing, considering they supposedly couldn't find my file when last requested. The judge asked them for a statement. They went on for a few minutes about why I didn't deserve to be removed, and justified their stance with the photos and prior rental history with them. All I had to reply was that I had paid for my share of the damage, that the damage was due to my abusive ex, and that I had made restitution as much as I could regarding the matter, with no money owing. The judge then asked why I had brought it to court. I explained that the company was dragging their feet removing my name when it was a simple matter, and it wasn't necessarily fair to do so, that I had called them repeatedly and waited while they found my so hard to locate paperwork that had somehow miraculously appeared when convenient, that being on the TICA list was harmful to my future chances at renting, and also that my name had been resubmitted after dropping off the list. The judge queried them why they had added my name again. They stated it was company policy. The judge expressed agreement with my stance. I had been punished enough, had made financial restitution, and now that my file had been located, I was not to be blacklisted anymore. Case decided in my favor. Win. The real estate agency was given 48 hours to submit proof to the court and a copy to myself that I was now off the list. Also, they had to pay for the $35 I spent taking them to court. A pair of agents walked out in a huff and were on the phone out in the hallway immediately after vacating the courtroom. I floated past them as I was on a justice high. As I got to the lifts, I thanked them for coming and their sound advice in recommending court. Also, that I was grateful for the bottle of wine they would be buying me with the $35 I was to be paid back. The look on their faces was priceless. It kinda makes me wonder if the manager's name over there was Karen. How dare you use our suggestion to go to court and call our bluff? You were supposed to be shocked and meek and wait for us to not do our job. I'd like to speak to your Wait, I am the manager. Never mind. I love how the company sent 2 representatives to the court. Even if only one of them was a lawyer, that trip to the court likely cost them a lot more than the original damage expenses that they were charging OP. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Birdie Bastard. You are going to call the police on me for doing my job? Okay, carry on. Let's jump right in. It's me again, Mr. Waterboy. I work for a water company carrying out repairs on burst water mains on an on-call basis of 1 week every 2 months. This particular job happened about 8 years ago. We get a call out that a major pipe feeding a large housing estate had burst and needed repairs ASAP. We head to the yard about 11 p.m. at night to collect our gear and get the plans and drawings of other utilities in the area of the work. We arrive on site and set up the traffic management as per regulations. Speak with the inspector that called us out for an exact location of repair. Too much water to mark in the usual way. We set up our barriers and work lights around the work area. We get our steel saw and cut a couple of meters of tar out, ready to start breaking the tar out of the road. Just as I started the jackhammer going, Mr. Sleepyhead comes stomping down the street in his slippers and dressing gown, looking rather perplexed. Took my ear protection off to see what he wanted. I could tell it wasn't to offer us coffee. He then proceeded to tell me, "You can shut that effing thing off and F off until it's daytime." I explained that it was emergency work and that we wouldn't have 600 properties get up and have no water in the morning, so it has to be completed now. And our work was fully understood by the council and the police. We then get the usual bollocks of, "Do you know who I am?" I refrained from telling him that I knew exactly who he is. He is an irritating arsewipe who was stopping us from working. He then starts turning the air supply off so I can't use the jackhammer, which was ever so slightly annoying. He then started that he knew the police chief inspector and would have me arrested if I carried on. I said that I have to carry on as per my emergency work order, and if he carried on obstructing us, I'd have to call the police to get the job finished. Needless to say, he did it again and said, "Call who you like, I'll have you arrested and sacked by the morning." By now, I was tired, cold and wet, and starting to get slightly irritated by his actions. So, cue malicious compliance, I go back to the van and ring the police to explain that we are out carrying out emergency work and we are being prevented from completing it by one of the local residents, and explain what he's doing to stop us working. He stomps off in his now soggy slippers, and I poured a coffee. About 40 minutes later, headlights appear in the distance, so I thought, great, just what we need so we can get done and recharge by 6 a.m., hopefully. Mr. Sergeant and Mr. Constable arrive and come for a chat to find out what the F is going on, and, his words, why the F are we doing it after midnight in the first place? So I proceeded to explain that the water main had burst and we needed to get the supply restored by 6 a.m. to save between 1,500 and 2,000, only a slight exaggeration, people having no water in the morning when they get up. He then realized the job needed to be done and toddles off for a word with Mr. Sleepyhead. Before long, we can hear the shouting from down the street. It then goes quiet, and he comes back down to us to explain that the guy was a sandwich short of a picnic, a British euphemism for a nut job, and that they are going to have to hang around in case Mr. Sleepyhead started playing stupid games. So we fire up the compressor and start jackhammering again with my back towards the police car to save anything pinging off in that direction. A few minutes later, the machine driver toots his horn to get my attention. Mr. Sleepyhead had only come down the road carrying a piece of timber, lumber for you American folks, and was in the process of getting arrested for disturbing the peace. I honestly laughed so hard I nearly pissed myself. Who the F is that stupid when the police are around? Just in case anyone is interested, we were back on by 5:30 a.m. and had a coffee off Mr. Sleepyhead's neighbor, who was highly amused because he'd seen the whole incident out of his window. His only disappointment was his surveillance cameras didn't pick up the video and he only had the audio to share with his mates. Can we please take a quick moment here to salute all of our utility workers? I mean, I know they don't want to be up in the middle of the night either, tearing apart the pavement to get to the lines. The least we can do is show them a little bit of respect. Unlike the way that Mr. Sleepyhead handled the situation, but I think we can all agree that he's got a couple of screws loose. Our next story today comes to us from Mavery X. Pay by check? You got it. Let's jump right in. Last year, I vacated a rental property in which I had resided for a few years. It was a pretty standard affair. Real estate agency was helpful, no real issues to report. They structured their business with a local office, which, as far as I know, simply handled the affairs of the tenants, with a home office located elsewhere which handled the back end and finances. When I signed my lease, I nominated to pay by bank transfer or electronic fund transfer. It's my preferred way since I dictate exactly when the payment is made and how much. I can also set it automatically so I never have to worry about it. Keeps the stress away. At the time, it was also the real estate agency's preferred method of payment. Well, partway into my tenancy, I received a letter stating that my real estate agency was changing banks and that for the time being, they were no longer able to accept EFT payments. They would have all tenants migrate to a third-party payment system. I was already unhappy with this decision since I didn't want to involve a third party regarding my rental payments. It seemed so unnecessary. The kicker, which really pissed me off, was that this company charged a fee for making your rent payment. A little digging into the motivation behind this change was quite revealing. In my country, real estate agencies must use a trust account, a bank account to handle money on behalf of other people, the owners renting out their property. Typically, these involve a different fee structure and sometimes have a certain number of fee transactions. Part of the real estate agency's job is to reconcile these accounts to properly allocate money to the right portfolios. I did some research on this other third-party company to which I was supposed to make these rental payments. They handle rent payments and the bookkeeping on behalf of real estate agencies. It seems they don't charge the real estate agency for this service, instead making the tenants pay for it. They also charge different fees depending on your payment method, which they conveniently don't advertise on the website. You only find out when your real estate agency sends you the sign-up form. In essence, my real estate agency wanted to save some time and money by throwing me and presumably the rest of their renting portfolio under the bus and make me pay a fee to pay my rent to a dubious third-party company. I was livid. Thankfully, my state saw these crapheads coming. In rental tenancy law, they specifically state that a real estate agency must provide at least one method of payment which does not incur a fee, beyond banking fees. My agency of course did this, but used the most obnoxious method possible, bank check. They knew people would be pressured to sign up for this system if their alternative was to write checks. But hey, they listed it as a valid form of payment, so cue the malicious compliance. I called my bank and immediately ordered a checkbook, shortly followed by an email to the real estate agency stating I would be making payments via check from now on. On my way home, I stopped by my post office and picked up some registered mail envelopes. Game on, effers. I was actually excited to do this as I'd never written a check before. I had a spreadsheet made with all the information I could record: check number, mail date, delivery date, cash date, tracking number, amount, you name it, I kept it. I also kindly notified the real estate agency that I had mailed the check and provided a tracking number so they could keep an eye on its delivery. Well, several days after the first check arrived, real estate agency's head office called me. They give me a grand story about how this new system they've migrated to is so good and how safe it is and how it's so convenient. I let her waffle on for a while and simply tell her that I'm not comfortable letting a third party handle my rent payments. I then tell her I'll think about it and hung up. I had no intention of changing my mind. Next day, I sent off another email stating I've considered it and I will remain paying by check. A few days before I mail my second check, yes, I'd only sent a single check at this point, I get another phone call. It's head office again. They're asking me to reconsider migrating. Out of the hundreds of properties in their portfolio, I was the only one who was paying by check. They also gave me some sob story about how they had issues with fraudulent transactions with EFT, which is a completely crap excuse. My first thought was that it's really unfortunate that all these other tenants now have to pay a fee to have the privilege of paying their rent. But the real estate agency offered a compromise. They said that they could set me up on a specific profile, which meant that the real estate agency would pay the fee, but that I would be required to pay via direct debit. There's no way in heck I'm letting anyone have direct access to my money, least of all a real estate agent. Mind you, I've never raised the fee as my concern. Bank check fees and mailing by registered post was slightly more expensive than the fees they would be charging anyway. My issue was the lack of control, and the fact that the real estate agency was effectively lying to me as an excuse to save money. I politely declined their offer and mailed off the second check. Real estate agency buckled. They had no leg to stand on. They openly stated that check was an acceptable payment method, then got all crappy when their plan didn't work on me. For the effort they tried to save reconciling my EFT payment, they had to keep doing it on top of accepting delivery of a check, cashing it, and waiting for it to clear. They emailed me after they received the second check. OP, we request that you make your rent payments via bank transfer from now on. Ha, remember the first email they sent me that they were changing banks and couldn't accept EFTs anymore? I wrote back, "My pleasure. As you've changed financial institutions recently, can you please forward me the details of your new trust account?" The response I got back was oh so satisfying. "Please just use the original details you were provided, and we will let you know if they change." Effing busted. F you, real estate agency. I caught you in your effing lie. I switched back to EFT as it was arguably more convenient for me, and despite my pettiness, I wanted to act in good faith. Though I was a little disappointed in getting prepared to mail checks and then abandoning my routine. They never changed their banking information for the remainder of my tenancy, by the way. It was all a ruse. I don't know if you guys were thinking this, but I couldn't help but think that OP should inform the other tenants there of this issue so that they could save the fees as well and really stick it to that rental company. Could you imagine how much time and effort that company would have to put into processing rental checks for like half of their tenants? Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.